Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm going to be talking about the full moon that is happening October 17th, 2024 at 4:26 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you're going to want to adjust your clock for wherever you are if you want to go and see this full moon. This full moon is a whammy of a full moon, and I think that it is the kind of the end of eclipse season, even though technically we aren't having an eclipse. There's some big players in the sky, and they're at late degrees. So the moon and the sun are at 24 degrees. Moon is in Aries, and the sun, which is opposing it, which makes it a full moon, is also at 24 degrees, but in Libra. So we're also wrapping up Libra season, the last final days with this full moon. And some features of this lunation are that we have Mars and Pluto and Venus in play as well. Mars is in Cancer at 22 degrees. He's in his fall. And we have Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees, which is anaretic. It's critical. It's at the last degrees. It's trying to wrap something up, this 20-year story that it's had. We have Venus at 29 degrees as well. So she's trying to wrap up something that she is trying to do here. Venus is in any given sign. I think it's like 2.5, 3.5 weeks, something like that, pretty short. So Mars and Venus are the rulers of the sun and moon. And they're not happy. The rulers of this lunation are not happy. They're either in their fall or they're in their detriment. They're not acting really well. They're emotional. They're feeling, a lot of kind of big baby protective energy. And I think that this can make people act out and be really spicy. We have a moon in Aries, right? It's conjunct Chiron. That's a part of this lunation. So there's a sensitivity here about identity. There's a wounding that is coming to light, with the full moon that needs to be addressed, right? Do I need to continue to be here in this situation? In general, this is all about a letting go. Something bigger needs to be let go of in order for us to embrace our own individual identities and our own purpose, that North Node in Aries. I am looking at this Grand Cross, the sun and moon with Mars and Pluto in this Grand Cross, and what a powerhouse, right? It's just a powerhouse of emotion. And I think that there is an opportunity here for there to be some violence, some aggression, some integration that needs to happen both emotionally, psychologically, and we have to grapple with something that we value, that we maybe is up for elimination here. We have Pluto and Mars are applying to be perfect right before the election. And I think that this lunation is going to help us see what that's about. Something's coming to a head there. So I feel like this full moon is going to feel a lot longer than it needs to. A lot longer than it needs to. And I was really hoping that, Jupiter and Gemini was going to, or Jupiter, just in general, Jupiter, our great benefic, was going to be of some help here. But, Jupiter and Gemini just went retrograde. He's in his detriment. He's, lots of ideas all at once. And so I just think it makes everything a bit mushy. There's just too much in the sky. This just feels like too much. And you can see it, you can see it in the conversations that are happening. And, people are saying, you can't hear me, you're acting too aggressively. And we're talking about countries, we're talking about people, we're talking about relationships. Like, we're talking about the idea of femininity and masculinity and, all of the ideas about gender that are very much under attack. all of these things are coming to light at the very end of Pluto and Capricorn, which talks about our societal structures and cultural norms and expectations that we need to get rid of, right? And because the lunation is an Aries with that sun in Libra, this is about relationships. This is about I versus me, I versus we. And, how do I be myself in a relationship? How do I find my own identity? How do I go my own way? Maybe how do I release myself from being too agreeable or too self-effacing or whatever it is, right? Inside of relationships so I can fully be me. And maybe there's a sensitivity here, right? With Chiron being a part of it that says, it's time to let this go so we don't continue to allow ourselves to be wounded here. I feel like this full moon is like a boil that needs to burst, and it is going to burst. And whether it happens right with the full moon or happens a few days later as Mars perfects its opposition to Pluto, we are going to see a lot of things come to a head in our life and in our societies, in our world, that cause us to make some greater adjustments with how we decide to go forward and how we decide that we want to be ourselves. I think about all of the people that are, potentially ending relationships because they realize that they can't fully be themselves inside of relationship, right? Or, people who are wanting to be mothers and thinking about the relationships that they're holding. Like, can they actually be the mother that they want to be the parent that they want to be? What are the roles of parenting here that need to be addressed in order for them to, safely, hopefully, do those things? All of this being right before an election is not great. I think the intensity of this really is calling for us to take greater care of ourselves, putting on the respirator before we put somebody else's on in the plane, to really think about and eliminate the ways that we have been too agreeable to our detriment. And the power struggles that might come up are big, really big. As Mars goes and opposes Pluto, like, that's a war aspect. It's not great. And hopefully, in our own individual lives, if something is coming to a head, we can recognize it before it fully pops off in a way that maybe feels not great to us. And then we can instinctually make the choices to go forward in our own way. So those are my thoughts. I've recorded this a few times, and there's just a lot in this chart. But those are kind of the big hits. And I hope that everybody takes care of themselves.